Okay, so today we will start our discussion with some advanced Visualforce concept. Okay, so we'll talk about a couple of advanced Visualforce components, and then we will get into, you know, we'll start talking about deployments and sandboxes. So I'll talk about that as well. So let's start the discussion with the Visualforce thing. So first thing that I'm going to talk for Visualforce is static resource. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is a static resource. Now, what is a static resource in Visualforce? Static resource allows you to upload content that you can reference in a Visualforce page. So sometimes while you're creating a Visualforce page, you might want to reference to some content, some file. It can be an image, it can be a JavaScript file, it can be a CSS file, it can be anything, right? Now, how do you access those files? So you have an option of uploading them as static resources, okay, and then referencing to those files, calling them on the Visualforce page. Okay, let's say there is a image that I want to display, there is a logo that I want to display on my Visualforce page. So in case I want to display a logo on my Visualforce page, all that I have to do is I just need to make sure that I upload that somewhere on the cloud, and then I reference it from there, so that anywhere anyone who is accessing that page can has that logo actually referenced, and that logo is also on the cloud. Okay, so that is what a static resource is. So static resource allows you to upload content that you can reference in a Visualforce page, such as images, style sheets, JavaScript, and other files. So it can be any file. Okay, you can reference a static resource by name in page markup by using a dollar resource global variable. So there's a global variable called dollar resource. Okay, so using this, you can access the resources from the static resources folder or directory which is there. All right. A single static resource can be up to 5 MB in size. So the maximum size allowed for a single static resource is 5 MB. Okay. And as an organization, the maximum that you can have is up to 250 MB of static resources total. So as an organization, you can have total 250 MB of static resources in total. Okay, and one static resource can be maximum of 5 MB. So whatever image or your style sheet or the JavaScript file, whatever you're creating should not exceed 5 MB, and altogether you will not be able to use more than 250 MB of static resources. All right. Now, how do we create a static resource? So creating static resource is pretty simple, just that you have to upload the file. That's it. You don't have to do anything. To create a static resource, it's as simple as going to setup, click on develop static resources, and then click new static resource, and then upload the file. Whatever static resource you want to use, you can just use it. So let me just use it once. 1 minute. Okay. So let's see how we actually use a static resource. So let me create a static resource here first. So I'll start with downloading an image, let's say Salesforce logo. Okay. So let's say this is the image that I want to use on my Visualforce page. So what I actually need to do is, first of all, I just need to make sure that this is less than 5 MB. It's just 3.26 KB, that's fine. Okay. So all that I need to do is go to setup, develop static resources and upload that image. Click on new, SLDC logo, choose a file, that's my desktop. Save. Okay. So name of my static resource is sfdc underscore logo. All right. Now if I create a Visualforce page, how do I reference to the static resource? So creating static
What
resources.
is that cache control? Cache control?
Cache control, right? Public or
Yeah.
private? Cache control is cache. Okay. So this is basically something which would control the access, basically, are you, uploading a static resource to be used by you yourself or for public? Okay. So just give me 1 minute. I'll give you a better definition on this. Yeah, same thing. So if you keep it private, then what will happen? Only it will be available for your use. Fine. So you will get to see those static resources used on the page only when you are logged in. All right, other people will not have access to that. If you make it public, then everyone will have access to that. Correct? So private becomes private
Yeah.
for this created by. Oh, okay. All right. So the logo is ready. Now, how do we reference to that? So let's understand how will I refer to this static resource on the Visualforce page. So referencing a static resource is pretty simple. To reference a standalone file, this one is a standalone file, right? I can have a file within a folder. That's something which can have a directory. So this is going to be a standalone file. So there you will just use this dollar resource global variable dot resource name. That's it. So I should, to access that, I should just use dollar resource dot sfdc underscore logo. That's it. Resource name is the name you specified when you uploaded the resource. For example, if it's an image, this can be like this. And there is a component called apex image. We can use that, and we have to define the URL for that image. And I also have an option of defining the width and height for that image. So that is it. So width and height are two attributes for the image component. So if you want, use apex slash apex image component, and for that you have to define the URL if you're using it from URL, and all that you have to do is you have to use this dollar resource, sorry, not dollar, exclamation mark, sfdc underscore logo, width 50 or 100, whatever you want, height 50, let's make it 100. Okay, so that's how we call it. All right. So static resource defined and then called on the Visualforce page. Right now, if it is public, anyone who opens this Visualforce page will have this static resource available or visible. Right. If it's something which is private, only the owner of or the creator of that static resource will have access to this. Right. So that is how it is. Okay. Clear on this? Okay. So this is one way of referencing to a static resource. So you can simply, if it's a standalone, then you can just simply use this exclamation dollar resource dot whatever file name. Okay, it can be JavaScript file or anything. If it is inside a directory to reference a file in an archive, if it's in an archive directory, use the URL for function. So in that case, you just have to, instead of using this, you just have to use it. If it was inside a certain file or something like that, a folder like that, then you should have, instead of resource, you should have written URL for dollar resource dot whatever folder name, and then give a comma, and then just write the location for that. Okay, so inside that particular zipped folder, there is another folder called images, and inside that there is something called like bluehills.jpg or whatever your sfdc.logo.jpg. You reference it to this that in this way. All right, so this is how we use static resource. Okay, so that's one thing. Now the next concept that we are going to talk about is the first concept that we have just talked about is static resources. The next is a custom component on Visualforce. So we have used a lot of Visualforce components, and we have always used those components which have been provided by Salesforce, right? All those standard components, right? How do I create my own Visualforce component? And why will I create my own Visualforce component? Why do I need a Visualforce component? Basically, when Salesforce has given me so many components, by default there are so many, why do I need a Visualforce component to be created from my side? Okay, so what's the logic behind that? There's a very simple logic for custom component. Similar to the way you can encapsulate a piece of code in a method and then reuse that method several times in a program. So the way we actually create a method and then we reuse that method in different places. Fine. Same way, you can encapsulate a common design pattern in a custom component. Okay, and then reuse that component several times in one or more Visualforce pages. As simple as that. So why do we need Visualforce component to be created, or why do we need custom component? In case I have a certain design pattern and I want to use the same design pattern in several different places, instead of defining the same pattern again and again in different Visualforce pages, what I can do is I can simply um, create a custom component and reuse that. So that can be used in different Visualforce pages. All right. So let's learn how to create a Visualforce custom component. We have understood the utility of it. Now let's get started with creating a custom component. So creating a Visualforce custom component is again something very simple, not that difficult actually. All that you have to do is go to your Salesforce, set up, develop components. Okay. So go to Salesforce, set up, develop components, and in there you have to click on a new Visualforce component. That's it. Okay, and then give a name to the component, whatever you want. Give a label and name. Component 1. Let's say that's my component. All right. So this is the name of my component. let me use a simple name, smaller one, so that it's easy for me to reference. Now whatever design pattern you want for the component, whatever you want that component to have, that needs to be written here. Okay, so you have to write the code for the component, but here it's not an apex page, it's an apex component. That is the reason why you start with apex component tag and you end with apex component tag. All right, whatever you want to write as code, you should write it inside this. So your entire design pattern which you want to be repeated needs to be written here. Okay, let's say my component should display um, simple text. All right, apex output text value. This is my new custom component. Okay, so now this is the content, or this is the description of my component actually. All right, so inside the component, what I've done, I have put this thing. All right, let me save it. All right, so the component is created. You have saved and your component is created. What is the name of the component? C1. Now if you are working on a Visualforce page, V2. Okay, I'm working with a Visualforce page, let's say, and I want to call my component here. So all that I have to do is, your custom components start with C. Okay, your custom component will not start with Apex. With Apex, all our Salesforce components start. Custom component will start with C colon, and then you will have all the list of your custom components. So I just created one, C1. Okay, that's it. See, so whatever I defined there, that thing has appeared here. Got it? So how this is being used? Line break. Startup custom component. Okay. See, so this thing has come from my custom component. This is something which I defined there. All right. Now let's go ahead and make this custom component a little more. You know, let's make it a little more complex. Um, in this case, what I've done, I have simply displayed the data uh, as it was, right? As it was written in the component. What I want is, I want the person who is using the page to supply the value, the text which needs to be displayed. Okay, in that case, what I have to do is, I have to define a parameter. So because in Visualforce we don't have a scope for parameter, what we can do is we can define attributes. So you can have attribute for this component. As of now, I've not defined any attribute for this component, right? Like our normal or standard Salesforce components have attributes. My custom components can also have attributes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define an attribute, and in that attribute, using that attribute, the end user will define the actual text which he wants to display here. So let's go ahead with that. So we go back to the component to edit the component. You can go to setup, develop components. Okay, so for this component, I will create an attribute. So if you want to create an attribute, you should go and say apex colon attribute. Name of the attribute, text. Okay, so you define the name of the attribute. Then you have to define a description for that attribute. This attribute is used for taking the text input. All right. So I've given a name for that attribute, which is it will be called text. What will be the type? Data type. What data type will be supplied to that attribute? It can be a number, it can be a string. Okay. And will it be, do you want to make it a required attribute? Yes. Okay. So I've created an attribute here which is called text. I've given a description. Description is something which will be used by the, which will be used for reference. People who are actually using this component there for their reference. So this does not have any actual functionality on the page. You have to define what type of data this attribute will accept. It will accept string, and it is going to be a required attribute. Okay. And for this output text now, because I don't want this to be static, this needs to be replaced by text. Okay. So text is the parameter where people will come and they will supply the value, and that will be displayed here on this component. That's all we needed. That's it. So now let's go and call this at component apex / v22. See, now because I just now created a required attribute for this component, now it says that the required attributes are missing. Okay, no worries. What is the required attribute? I've created text. See, now it has got attribute. So text. Now text, this will take a string. You can define any string. Hello, how are you? And it will show you that particular input. Got it? So whatever you supply in this text input, that will be displayed on the page. Okay. Good to see you. So now this is depending on what input we give. All right. Okay. So let's create one more component. We'll try and make it a little more complex. We'll try to add a couple of attributes on that. Okay, let's create another component and I'll put a couple of attributes in that. So we'll just need to go to setup, create components, develop components, new, C2. This time my component name is C2. Okay, this time I will define a couple of attributes here. So first will be text. I just don't want to control what text will be displayed. I also want to control how do we want to display the text. Okay, so some CSS we will use here. All right, and I say description, enter the text to be displayed. Okay, name is there, description is there. What else do I need? I need type string, and I need required. Let's make it a required attribute. So this becomes a required attribute. One attribute I've defined, which is the text. And then I define another attribute. I name it text color. Okay, then user will define which color he wants the text to be displayed in. Description, enter the text color. Okay, this should also take a string, and this should not be required. Let's not make it mandatory. If the user wants a specific color, he can define, otherwise he can just leave this attribute. One more attribute for the border color, name border color. Okay, description, enter border color, and let's make it string. Sorry, type. This border color will also be string. And this should be required true. Let's make it true. Okay, I will define one more attribute with the border width. Apex attribute name border width. Description, enter border width here, and then type. Okay, here the type should be what? Should not be string, no? This should be integer. Required true. All right. So I've defined four attributes: text color, border width. Okay. Which one? Fix output text. So value that will be displayed is text. Okay. And this text color, and the border width, these need to be defined using the CSS. So let's go back to the CSS tutorial, W3 School CSS. Okay, CSS text. So for text color, you just have to give color. So my color should be text color, right? This should come from this variable. Style equals okay. So color of the text will be this. How about the border color? CSS border. So border width is what I am defining, for which I've given the integer. Border width equals, sorry, border width will be this border width. And there should be some border color also, no? So for border color, you make it this. Okay. So four attributes, three of those are actually used for defining the CSS, the style of the text, the color of the text, border width, and the border color, and one is for the actual text value. All right. And let's make this also true. So all these are now required attributes. So whenever you are using this component, you have to supply value for all these required attributes. Okay. Now let's go to my page, Apex page, and let's call this component C. Okay. So first attribute that I need to define is text. This is my text in my style. Whatever text you want to display, write that. Border color, let's say the border color you want is red. Border width, okay. border width, let's say 10, and text color blue. So the text comes from here. Border width and border color did not work. This should be blue. Okay. Give me 1 minute. Border. So if I just use only border, then what happens? Develop. So border width is this pixels. Alright. Some small error that we are doing while signing this. Okay, let me just say border. This is not required. Save it. Okay, let me call it once again. Still it's not showing it. Text. Hello. Text color red. Border color blue. Okay. So there is some issue with the way we are calling the CSS. Okay, but we can use that. So there's no problem at all with that. Right. So I think I'll leave it up to you to go and check the correct CSS and use it here. So basically, primarily our objective is to understand how we can use attributes. So we are able to do that, right? So some way we are not calling the border attribute correctly. You can call anything else with the font size, style, whatever you want to supply from your side. All right. So are we clear on this? Do we understand this custom component thing? How it works? Fine. So you have the option of defining your attributes and then creating those custom components, and then you can call those custom components on the uh, Visualforce page. So now you will be able to call this custom component on all the Visualforce pages that you create. All right. So that's the advantage of this. Okay. So custom components we have just talked about. Now the third thing that we're going to talk is a Visualforce email template. Okay. So the advantage of Visualforce email template is that you will be able to display some list of records also within the email body, right? Normal email templates that we create can be connected to one record. But in case I want a related list kind of a thing or multiple records to be listed on the email body, that thing can be done using a Visualforce email template. All right. So let's see how do we do that. So creating Visualforce email template is simple as creating any other email template. So you just need to go to communication templates, email templates, and then you say new template and select Visualforce. Fine. Select Visualforce and go to next. And then you create your own Visualforce email template. Okay. So everything what you see here is pretty similar to what you have already seen in other email templates. The folder you define, whether you want to make it available for you, what email template name you want to give. I want to call it ET1. Okay. Description in case you want, email subject and recipient type related to type. Okay. Email subject is let's say my new email. Okay. Recipient is contact. So here if we are talking about uh, a Visualforce email template, the recipient type can be someone who has an email, right? So here we have emails for contacts, leads and users. So let's say my recipient type is contact. This email will be sent to contacts. Related to can be any other object, okay, which is related to the recipient. So let's say my related to is account. All right. The Salesforce.com object type that the template will retrieve merge field data from. Okay, this can be any object that has a standard controller, including custom objects which are supported by Visualforce. All right. So related to is the data, the object from where you are gonna retrieve the data, and this recipient type is the person who's gonna receive the email. All right. So let's say my related to type is account. Okay. Now save it. Your email is created. Okay. You've created your email. Now what you can do is, this is the email. Subject is my new email, and this is the body of the email. Okay. You can edit the template. Now what you have to do is you'll have to edit the template using the Visualforce code. So this is actually written using Visualforce code. All right. And this Visualforce email template starts with a messaging.email template component, and it ends with a messaging.email template component. So starts with this component, and so this is written within this messaging.email template component. Okay. So messaging.email template has these attributes: subject. So this is where you define the subject. So we did that through the UI, but you can change it here also. What will be the subject of the email? Who will be the recipient? So recipient type can be contact leader, user. Related to type can be anything, whatever objects you have in Salesforce. Okay. Currently, it's using a plain text email body. Okay, so in plain text email body, what you can do is you can put plain text. All right. But let's say I want to use an HTML email body. So you have an option of putting your HTML code here. Okay. So what you can do is maybe remove this entire stuff. So this was plain text. I will create HTML text, HTML email body. Okay, so for plain text, the component is messaging.plainText email body, and for HTML email body, you have to use the component messaging colon HTML email body. All right. So that is what we will have in this. Now for my HTML email body, let's say in the email body, I want to start with something like dear okay. So if you want to use the name of the contact, just use this recipient.name. And then, so because this is HTML, so you are able to use HTML components here, right? Here is a look at the cases of your company, or related to his account, right? Okay, so related to is the account, right? Related type is account. So this will display name of the account. Okay, related to dot name means account name. Recipient dot name means contact name because recipient type is contact. And now let's say you want to display all the cases from this related to account, the account which is connected to it. I want to display all the cases or opportunities or anything. Okay, so in that case what I can do is I can use a simple HTML table. So if you want a reference on how to create an HTML table, here it is. So what all components it uses. Okay, so one row. So I think the first row should have headers and then the values. Yes. So first row will have the headers and then the values. So let's do that. Table row. Okay, and in this one I will have the headers. So first header is, let's say, case number. Region. Contact email. Status. So this row ends up here. So I'm using a complete HTML table, not the Visualforce table for displaying the data here, right? Good thing about using HTML table is that your content is a lot more lighter as compared to Visualforce components, right? So this is a good practice to use these HTML tags for creating a table if you are designing something which might need to be accessed on mobile, right? So if you're creating a page which you want to access through mobile and stuff, try to avoid Visualforce components as much as possible, not only here, on your Visualforce pages also. Okay, so all those components, standard and all those components, they are very heavy as compared to these HTML components. All right. Okay, so first row is created for the header. Now I want to create more rows. Okay, so for that you can use an apex component which is called apex repeat. Okay, so using apex repeat, what you can do is you can just repeat the same row multiple times. Right. So for repeat, I have two attributes like the table component. I have two attributes, but table component is where we use the columns, right? One, column two, column three. Here the rows are being repeated. So that is the thing. All right. So that's the difference. So my value will be, sorry, related to dot cases. I want to display the cases, related list cases, and a variable, same like a page block table called C. Okay. Now in this I will say C dot case number. C dot origin. C dot contact dot email. C dot status. Okay, so usually what we do in a page block table, we are using the repeat component, which is pretty similar to the page block table, just that there you define columns and here you have defined rows. So it creates first row and then again repeats and then third row. So it's more like a loop. Whatever number of records, it will keep on creating rows for that. We'll keep on repeating that many times. That's it. So my messaging email body is ready. I can say kind regards and whatever. Okay. So the email template is ready. It's an HTML email template. Okay. The table that we have created does not have borders and stuff. And I also did not give a line break here. So you can just edit a few small things. Like after dear, this and all, you need a line break. I need a line break here as well. That's fine. And you can make your table look more beautiful using HTML, with all those table attributes. I'll just keep it as it is. Let me just check some account from which I have some cases. Yeah, here I have two. Okay, so I can just send test and verify. Okay, so related to account, you can pick it from here. This can be the related to account, related to contact, can be anything. Send email preview. No, don't want to send email preview. Just want to do a preview here. See, case number this, origin web, contact email. So you could have actually made this table a little more, as I told you. You could have improved the look and feel of this entire email, but the purpose is solved, right? So now this is capable of picking an account and then displaying the details of the cases under that account. Correct? So that is how we can actually use a Visualforce email template. All right. So it's good for displaying list of values or records on some email template, right? So if you just want to send an email to someone saying that, okay, fine, these are the cases that we have worked in last 1 month for you or something like that, we can actually do that. Okay. So clear on this? Please let me know if anyone has a question or doubt here. Simple stuff. Fine. Now the next thing that we're going to talk about is, so creating Visualforce email template is done. Now we will talk about force.com sites. Okay, so what's a force.com site? Force.com site is a simple way of hosting your Visualforce pages on the force.com domain. Okay, in case you have a Visualforce page, and why will you do that? Okay, in case you have a Visualforce page and you want that Visualforce page to be accessible publicly, not through your Salesforce login, but you want that Visualforce page to be accessible, available to the public, then you need a force.com site. Okay, so the concept is pretty simple. Let's say you've created a page. Think about it as if like let's say you have a products thing here, right? You just want everyone, you have created a page which has a list of all your products, their features and their prices and everything. All right. A product is something that you want your customers also to see, right? If all of your customers do not have access to Salesforce to log in into Salesforce and then click on products and view it, right? You want your products page to be public. Now to make that page public, what do we need? We need a domain hosting, right? You might have your website and you might have created a list of products on your website. That's one thing. In case you do not have a website and you have not listed that there, and you just want to create a site and you want that site to be connected to Salesforce, okay? Or you just want to create a Visualforce page and embed it inside your own website, all right? That can also be done. So first thing that you have to do is you have to register for a force.com site. So force.com basically creates a subdomain for you. What is a subdomain? Subdomain is a child domain. So force.com is the actual domain. They will give you subdomain, like you can have nirmala.force.com. So this becomes a subdomain for you. Okay. So first thing that you have to do is you have to register for a subdomain. How do you do that? And that Salesforce will do for you. You just have to go to setup, develop sites. Okay. Go to setup, develop sites, and register your force.com domain. So basically we're talking about registering your subdomain. So because this is a developer edition, here this subdomain already is of this long URL, but if you have a paid edition, it will just be your whatever name you provide .force.com. Okay, so Nirmala 1234, let's say this is what I'm searching for, and now because it's a domain name, it has to be available also. It has to be unique. So I have to check the availability. Okay, Nirmala 1234, this is available. So just go to this. I have read and accept the force.com site terms and conditions. Register my force.com domain. Okay. Once you register, you will not be able to modify your force.com domain. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Right. So it registers the subdomain for you. Your job is done. Now you have to create a site. So now what's actually a site? Site is something which you will display on this domain. Okay, so this is your domain, and then you can create a site under that. So that's like a page. Okay, like you must have seen other websites. So there's a domain name for the website, monster.com, naukri.com, and after that they have pages inside those, right? So there's a home page, there's a contact us page. So the same way you can create pages inside this now. This is your domain and you can create pages. Good thing about this domain is now this domain is connected to your Salesforce account, right? So you don't have to do anything to connect this with your Salesforce account. This is already connected to your Salesforce account. You can display your Visualforce pages, and with the help of your Visualforce pages, you can display the data on that page, and this is publicly accessible. All right. So developer account gives you only one site option. So I can create one site. So let's create that. Domain registered. Let's create the site. My site. Whatever name you want, you can give. So your site address will be this .force.com slash whatever name you want, my site. Okay. And now what is going to be your active site home page? So what page you want to display, that you have to select. It can be a Visualforce page. So let me just quickly check which Visualforce page we want. Let's say I want okay, B17 is what I want to be displayed. So you can just go and select your active site page to be V17. Okay, that's it. That's the only thing that you have to do. Domain registered, created a site, choose the Visualforce page that you want to be displayed. That's it. Now you have to activate this site. Okay, it will be visible once you activate it. Even before you activate, there is a small thing that you have to do. Now what you want to do is you just want to make this page as public. Means people who click on that link, they should be able to see this page. Okay, and what data I am displaying inside this page? Opportunities, right? So I just have to make opportunities data also public. So that is one small thing that I have to do. By default, all this data, all these objects are private, public, they are not public. Okay, so public means external public cannot see them, right? By default, that's all restricted to the users, internal users, not for external users. So only thing that you have to do is you just have to go and control the public access settings for this site. Okay, click on public access settings, then go to edit and give a read permission on opportunities. Where is opportunity? Here it is. Just have to give a read permission on that so that people can view opportunities. Okay, so whatever data you want to display on a public site, you just have to go to public access settings and you'll have to control that. Make sure that you have at least given a read permission on that, otherwise people will not be able to see the data. That's it. So permission controlled. Basically what it does is it creates a separate profile for that site, the people who will see that site, and we actually go and give that permission on that profile. So now if I give you the URL, you should be able to see the data. Okay, let me activate this. Make sure you activate it, otherwise people will not see it. Okay, and this is the URL. Putting it in the chat window. Just use it and see if you can see the data. Just click. Okay, so while I'm talking about force.com sites, there are two things which we can do using force.com sites. I can have public view my data and I can have public enter the data into the system. Okay, so you can just create the page the way you want. If you want people to enter the data, then you should have a create new option, kind of a button there, where or save button there, where which they can use for entering the data into the database. So anyone from anywhere, like if you are a job consulting company and you just have displayed all the jobs on your web page, and then you also want people to enter the application. So you should create a Visualforce page which can display the jobs, and then there should be a button where you have an option to take them to another page which allows them to create an application, or maybe on the same page they can enter some fields and create an application, right? So that sort of thing can be done. Okay, so that's about the force.com sites. Now let's talk about packaging and distribution. Okay, what is packaging and distribution? Packaging and distribution is a simple concept. In case I have created an application and I want to distribute it to others, I want to give it to someone else who is not a part of my organization, who has a different organization. So we have a simple way of doing that. We just need to create a package, put all the components inside that package, and then give it away to that particular other person. All right, how that is done? You can go to setup, create packages. All that you have to do is create a package, click on new, put all the components. Okay, give a name to the package, let's say package 1, save it, add the components that you want to be included in this package. Those components can be anything. Whatever you see in Salesforce, everything can be added as a component, but it always has to be a custom component, a component that you have created. It cannot be a standard component, because standard component is something that everyone has, right? So you also have, I also have, so I don't need to take standard components from you. Okay, so what about custom things you have created? In case you want to share those with me, you can do that. Okay, so let's say there are a few custom permission sets or whatever, custom objects. You have not created anything on this, right? So let's say a few, let's say my Visualforce components, the ones that I just created, I want to give it to you. All right, so I can just add this to package. All right, that's it. So if you've created a few Visualforce components and you feel that those are really important, helpful, nice things, just create those components and then add them to package. Once you're done with adding components to the package, you just need to go ahead and upload it. Okay, so give a version name for the package, maybe May 2015. Okay, and upload. So this will upload the package and give you an installation URL. Okay, all that you have to do is you just have to share that installation URL with anyone who needs this package. So this package has some Salesforce components. I've got the installation URL, I can share it with you. All that you need to do is you need to click on this installation URL. It will ask you to log in into your developer edition, and you can use this to install the package. So installing the package will help you get both these components on your account. Got it? So this is the simple concept of packaging and distribution. So whatever we have created, so a lot of times it happens, right? If you are working for a client, or let's say you have designed an application completely on your own. You designed the entire application and you saw that it's working absolutely fine. You just want to give it to some client or some friend or anyone else, right? Or maybe you were developing on a developer edition and then you started deploying it to the enterprise edition of the client. For testing, you have developed it on your developer edition, and then you have started deploying it to the client's login. Okay, so the best way to do that is create a package, all those components that you have created, put them in the package, upload the package, get the installation URL and share it with the client. Okay, or so now if I give you this installation URL, you can use this installation URL, click on that installation URL. It will ask you to set up your login and password. Enter your login password for a developer account or whichever Salesforce account you have, and it will install the components in your org. Okay, so what installation will do? It will not do anything. It will just, whatever components are here, it will go and create those components within your Salesforce org also. So these two components will be created and you will be able to use them. Okay, so that's what an installation is going to do. Okay, please tell me if you are clear on this. Packaging and distribution concept is okay?
Can we
Mhm.
can we upload this from Sandbox to production, Jeet,
Sandbox to
directly?
production is something which I'm going to talk. This is not sandbox to production. This is basically about two different
If we
orgs.
okay okay if we want to move this package from this to production, then we
There is a
can.
different concept for doing that. So this is not for sandbox to production. I will come to sandbox and production. This is for two
Okay.
different orgs which are not connected. All right. So it's like you make a phone call to people who are actually somewhere else, right? For someone who is sitting right in front of you, you don't make a phone call, right? So something like that. So sandbox production is something which is connected. So you don't use package for that. So that's a wrong approach. Okay. So don't compare it with sandbox and production thing. I will talk about sandbox production now, but this is for orgs which are not connected, your developer org and my developer org, there is no connection, right? Then we will use this approach. Okay, now the next concept that we are going to talk is basically about the sandbox and production. Okay, so since we have seen that we have created something and we want to share it with someone else, we use this package concept. All right, now there's another concept of sandbox. Okay, so sandbox is basically, as we understand, it's the replica of the actual production environment, and we do all the development on the sandbox. Okay, now why we don't use the sandbox? Why we don't use packaging concept in sandbox and production? Because the sandbox and production are both connected orgs. So there's a connection between my production and sandbox. Okay. So in case I want to move something from a sandbox to production, I don't use package. I use another thing which is called a change set. So the terminology used for that is change set. Okay. Concept is same, name is different. A change set is also like a package which can hold components. Okay. So the terminology or the name that we are using is different, but the concept is exactly the same. There is no difference between what a package does and what a change set does. Right? So if it's a sandbox to production kind of a movement or a sandbox to sandbox kind of a movement, then use a change set. If it's one org to another org movement, then use a package. Okay. So now there's a small thing. We do not have a sandbox environment for developer edition, right? So in our developer edition, there is no sandbox environment which is available, because by default, developer edition itself is a sandbox. It's not a production environment, right? It's for learning, testing, and stuff like that. So for that, what we do is we just have to understand a few concepts. Okay, because you do not have this developer edition available for you to help you work on a sandbox. All that you have to do is just listen to what I'm gonna speak for next 5-10 minutes and remember those things. All right. Your sandbox environment looks exactly the way your production environment looks, and both of them look like this. Only difference between a sandbox and a production visually will be, for a sandbox you will have a sandbox written here, so you'll have the sandbox name written here at the top. Okay, let's say your sandbox name is sandbox my sandbox. So let's say your sandbox name is my sandbox. So at the top you will have this thing written. So looking at that, you can understand that that's a sandbox. All right. So that's one. Second is, to log into sandbox, you use test.salesforce.com. Okay. Another small difference is, you don't log into sandbox using salesforce.com. You use test.salesforce.com to log into the sandbox. Okay. Your login ID becomes, let's say your production login ID is g@abc.com. Your sandbox login ID will become g@abc.com dot my sandbox, name of the sandbox. Okay, so this is name of sandbox. I told you na, this is the name of the sandbox. So every sandbox has a name. So your organization, when they set up the sandbox, they will give it a name. It can be ABCD, whatever they want. So you just have to use this as the login ID. So URL that you're going to use is test.salesforce.com. Login ID will be production, whatever it is. For sandbox, it will be just a suffix of dot sandbox name at the end. Okay. Password can be same. No problem with the password unless you don't go and change it in the sandbox. Okay. Now, how to create, change, sets, and deploy. So it's a very simple thing. So there are 4-5 steps which you just have to understand and keep in mind. That's it. Okay. Step 1. So basically, all the development we do in sandbox, right? Now once you have developed something and then you have tested it and you are ready for deploying it. Okay. So all that you have to do is just go to setup. Okay. So on sandbox, you have to create the change set. So go to setup, deploy, and go to outbound change set. So there's an option called outbound change set. Okay. And then you click on new. Create change set. Add components. Exactly the way we do it on packages. Add components to change set. All right. Upload. Okay. And log out of the sandbox. Then log into your production. So log into the production account. Here you go to setup, deploy, let's say the new change set that you have created, you have named it CS1. Okay, let's say. So once you log in into production, you just go to setup, deploy, inbound change set. Select. So once you go to inbound change set, you will have the option of all the chain sets which have been deployed. You will be able to see them. Select CS1, the one which was uploaded from there. Select CS1. Then it will ask you to validate that. Validate the change set. You are done. Okay, so validating the change set is like accepting the change set. Okay, so it has been sent from the sandbox environment to the production. The only thing that you have to do is just go to the production, go to inbound change set and receive it. That's it. So it's more like installation kind of thing. Okay, it will take a couple of minutes and that will be done. So that's it. So this is how simple it is. Okay, though we do not have a sandbox environment available with the developer edition, but don't worry. So if you understand whatever I have talked in last 5 minutes, I think you know everything on sandbox. Okay, and completely works the way a package works. Just that always use that terminology change set for the sandbox and production deployment and stuff. All right. Now please let me know if you have any questions on this. Any doubt, questions?
Is this the only way to move the setting from sandbox to production? Is there any other way to move without using change set?
See, there are several basically ways of doing your development, right? So you can do it on a, let's say you're doing your development on Eclipse, you can actually do it there and move it from there and stuff like that. Okay. But if you are on a sandbox, this is the only way. Correct? So your development can be happening on different platforms, not only on the sandbox. Sometimes, we develop on completely a third-party tool like an Eclipse. All right. So then to deploy things from Eclipse, it's a different approach. But if we are talking about a sandbox, then this is how we do it to the chain set.
Okay.
Got it?
Okay. They have asked me in the interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if I'm working on the sandbox, then this is the only way.
Okay.
Fine. If you have done your development on the sandbox environment, then this is the way.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So any other questions or doubts on this?
No, Jeet, now I'm good. I'll go back and try to work everything. If I have any doubt, then tomorrow I'll come.
Sure. So just work on this. Okay. And so we have talked about quite a few things today. We have talked about static resources, then we talked about custom components, Visualforce email templates, force.com sites, packaging and distribution, and sandbox. All right. So just work on these things, and then we meet tomorrow and we talk about a few advanced Apex concepts. Okay. So we'll understand Apex in a little better way. All right. So tomorrow we meet the same time
Okay,
and we will talk further on Apex.